All right, guys, it is a rare occurrence today. We have someone very special that I'm going to be asking a lot of questions about law firm marketing. This is going to be a disruptively powerful podcast / interview with Seth Price, who has grown his law firm literally from 2 attorneys to 40. Okay, let that sink in for a second. That is like, what? 40 attorneys, not 4, okay? 40, okay? From 2, primarily through digital marketing, which is crazy because a lot of attorneys always say when I'm on calls, all of our best clients come from referrals and digital marketing doesn't work. But the really cool thing about Seth, and I hunted him down, it was funny, when I met him at the National Trial Lawyer Summit, he was wondering, who the heck is this guy? Like, I sent him like 10 emails to interview him. Because I was so impressed with how he literally took his in-house marketing department and said, you know what, we could offer what I'm doing for myself to other lawyers, systemized what was working, and now he's built one of the most reputable high-end SEO agencies for lawyers nationwide. So he's one of the top 50 lawyers in the Northeast by Amtrak Magazine, selected as one of the top 100 attorneys in Washington, D.C., probably top 10.
That's all the nonsense, that's the marketing side. So that, I could take you on the road with me or I could just stay home and let you do it. So it's humbling. And I got to tell you, so this guy is emailing me and wants to meet. I'm like, who is this guy? And I got to say, meeting in Miami, tremendous. I mean, the energy and enthusiasm and the fact that you're trying to do stuff right. It is so rare in the space that somebody has a passion for it. And it's not about a click funnel or let me see how many people I can sucker, but rather you've really done a nice job of looking under the hood and saying, okay, look, the secret's out. PPC, it's expensive. Cost per click is expensive. How do we get eyeballs, relevant eyeballs at a cost-effective rate? And I was inspired because it reminded myself of me from a few years back. And I'm excited to see where you go because what you brought to the table and the fact that you're thinking outside the box, it's easy just to sit there and push quality score and improve ad content, but looking for ways that other people aren't in order to get in front of people. My hat's off to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it is really tough, us being a PPC focused agency. It's gotten so expensive, as you are, famous as saying, you always say to, when you're coaching lawyers that SEO allows you to have higher profit margins because it's long-term less expensive. And this ties into one of the big questions that I had for you, which I'm sure is going to be lingering because there's a price tag attached to all SEO and there's that long-term ROI. So one of the things that I was so fascinated to hear your viewpoint on is how to get past that initial dead period, as I call it, when you start doing SEO.
And look, SEO done right doesn't have fairy dust. It doesn't have a silver bullet. It's hard work, right? If you've heard me before, if you heard anybody else who knows what they're talking about, they're fundamentals: high quality content, authoritative links, well-coded site using schema and every other bell and whistle you can get there. Focusing on Google My Business, getting reviews, all that stuff is going to make you money. But you're right. And as the owner of BluShark, the issue that I come to a lot is how do you deal with that? Because there's no guarantees with PPC within reason. Although I don't think it's as immediate as it was, but by the time you get your quality score set, you can turn this on and off as a spigot. SEO is not that. And I think that's a much harder conversation. Talking from the agency point of view, I think anybody who thinks they're writing a check and it's going to be magical, those are not the most successful. Even when you look at other agencies besides ourselves and say, hey, we have a superstar in this market, it is rare that superstar, that's top of in a very competitive market, just magically wrote a check and somebody did work for them. Most of the time it is a collaborative effort. Google is trying to judge authority, and the job of a good SEO is to put that authority front and center for Google. Now, again, what they're trying to prevent is the kid in their basement who's 1 year out of school, from owning it. And they've done a pretty good job. In most markets, you see top players competing. Do they do a great job of knowing that it's a substantive place rather than a place with terrible lawyers? They're not completely onto that, but reviews are a great equalizer there.
Yep.
So what I have seen is that to do SEO, it is the execution of those fundamentals. And that whether you do it, you'll see you have no real extra revenue, but you have more time and you love to write. I know people that have made a great living in different areas, from nursing homes to, medical malpractice and others, where they just write. If you write high quality content, that is one of the two Google stated building blocks. If you have basic content, that's fine, and you're really creative, and you can get major places, you can talk major places into including backlinks to you, that can make you a buck. And if you bring all that together, that's the home run. So, it's tough. I started, back, 10, 12 years ago, when it was much, much easier, and that spammy tactics worked, and there was a bunch of things you could do that would trick Google. Less and less is that possible. The number of areas to trick Google is nominal, and the costs and punishment that are doled out are dramatic. So I say to people, start small, be realistic. If you're in a major market in PI in Orlando, Atlanta, you're not going to just walk in with no budget and compete organically. You've got to find a different way to make a buck. But if you say, you know what, I'm going to take this, I know there's a spot, and I can't compete in a major market, but I can get, my hometown is an hour and a half outside of town, and I'm going to start putting a flag there and building authority and allowing yourself to cash flow where it's more realistic and it's faster to get to profitability and faster to see a return. Because in a major market, it could be years and you may never get there. But in a smaller market, you get there more quickly. Same with type of law, PI, med mal, huge competitors. You start to leave that space, there really aren't as many. Now, the multiples may not be as much, and you got to do what you love, but understand that from a digital marketing point of view, we grew as criminal. We didn't grow as PI or med mal. We grew in an area that at the time didn't have as much competition. So we were able to get our real estate on Google, get cash flow, and then use that in order to expand and build the firm.
Yeah. So, and you used a very key word there, the fairy dust and pixie dust, or I always say that it's not that. And you used a very key word, which was collaborative. And one of the things you guys do that's so unique is you've systemized this approach, which is so awesome to me, where you actually interview the attorney, you capture their local market knowledge, and then you humanize what they say in that interview so that it's relevant to their target market through the on-page content on their website. And the fact you guys systemize this, I remember years ago, I read about that being the best way to do it. But I thought to myself, gosh, attorneys are so busy. How would I ever strap them down to get them to do an interview? I mean, it is so impressive that you guys have done that.
Some do, some don't. I always say, somebody talks, should I blog? Well, depends. Do you like to write? And if the answer is no, it's not going to happen. You're not going to do it. So what I really want for people is to figure out what you like. If somebody loves doing the audio interviews, great. If somebody loves writing, if somebody's like, you know what, I'm not going to do either, don't go. If you're not going to, you have to be honest about that and then get third-party written content to fill those pages, making sure a lawyer approves them so you keep your bar license. But the goal is to do everything you can to make sure that you're getting the voice of the person, because as Google gets more sophisticated, they went with a semantic patents, all these different things. As the algorithm gets more sophisticated, they know the difference. And the more we can layer the voice of the attorney and the knowledge of the attorney, yes, it's a good, better user experience. That's a given. But it's also starting to make a difference for Google. It has and will continue to make more of a difference for Google. And so my strong wish for people who want to compete is figuring out how to do that in a scalable, realistic way. You don't want to stop your practice. You can't practice law and make money. At the same time, if you're not part of it, and like anything else, if you left on vacation and left your paralegals for 2 months unattended, I'm guessing you'd have some stuff to clean up when you got back. I don't think it's any different with an organization where, just for us, I'll talk personally, we have a row house in DC, in DuPont Circle. When people come, and it's primarily millennials who are working on the projects, get to meet the people they're working with, or at least somebody from the firm, there's a personal connection. Everything you do that takes it from a widget where you're systematizing a process to humanizing people, that I think gives a huge competitive advantage.
And a cool thing there, is when you think about, interviewing attorneys, getting their local market knowledge and then putting that into on-page content, you read about all of these changes happening. 40% of US adults now doing at least one voice search per day, going, hey, Google, and, asking their phones, for what they need. And in addition to that, Google just makes, I don't know if it was a couple months ago or what, but BERT, the big SEO algorithm update, the biggest shift that nobody's talking about in 5 years, all of this, BERT literally is designed to match user intent versus keywords to keywords, right? So for example, if someone's typing in, need to sell my car, they want to see an ad or SEO result that says, we buy cars, not sell your car, but that means the same thing. It's matching intent. And the cool thing about what you're doing with interviewing attorneys is this is already an ahead of the trend thing, because you're going to get more vernacular by having recordings from interviews, which is going to match up with voice search, which is going to become so big in the next 5 years.
Right, and I think it's both. I mean, we do regular written content in the more traditional sense, but that's why, look, not that algorithms don't affect our sites, but generally, after the dance is over, the sites that we work on with best practices, when that stuff happens, it only helps. It can be frustrating when you're on the way up, but once you're there, if you continue to execute on those best practices, it's can an algorithm knock out? Anything's possible. But we have seen is that if you're doing it the right way, the way Google wants you to do it, and not taking the shortcuts, that generally those people will do as well or better after an algorithm. I'll give you an example of stuff that happens. So some people have massive sites and get a ton of traffic, and traffic's good for us. Algorithm clearly takes into account people coming through the site, whether it be direct search, social, whatever. But what I have seen is some of those updates have dropped traffic. People wig out. And I look at it and I say, okay, yes, your traffic dropped, but that was for irrelevant pages that were not people's intent. And they found better places for it. For the stuff you care about, for your money keywords, those actually went up. So if you have 50,000, I mean, it's an extreme example, but if you have 50,000 uniques and it's down to 10, and that 10, are the people you want. And before you were getting 5, it says Google, as you're saying, is figuring out what somebody's intent is. Some blog that's interesting for out-of-state people, well, yeah. Could you get a guy from Montana signed up and referred out? Maybe, but that's very, very tenuous. What you want is to be found for your money stuff. Google wants it, and if you continue to give them direction through links and through content, as well as making sure that the code and structure of the site is there, that's our world. That's our sauce.
Yep. So let's zoom out for a second. We promised ourselves we wouldn't go into the weeds, but we're both very passionate about the weeds, quote unquote, not weed. I know you do criminal law. Okay. So what I want to drill into is how should lawyers, let's take a step back. Let's think, how should lawyers even be thinking about marketing? There's something in your head that has allowed you to grow to 40 attorneys. And I know that there's tons of stuff we could talk about in terms of hiring great attorneys. I know that's one of your keys to success. And then also keeping the phone ringing on the other side. So what are attorneys missing that cap out at, maybe 4 or 5 staff? Is it some different way of thinking that you have maybe from birth, or just maybe from your childhood? Or
some of it's, I love puzzles, building stuff. That was me. I was fortunate. I had a law partner. I went to college and law school with him, Dave Benowitz. Went to UPenn together. Went to GW Law. I've been stuck with this guy since 1987. Spring break 1988 to Florida in an old Buick LeSabre. But what I would say is that by dividing and conquering, and if having somebody who makes sure the legal is there and somebody who makes the marketing is there. And the problem is, you're like, hey, what if you're a solo? And I almost say that it's like if let's say you're a criminal defense lawyer, and you're trying to put out that you are an elite criminal defense lawyer. So when somebody calls, I have found when I started out, we lost clients sometimes by charging too little. If somebody did not believe that we were authoritative enough, that nobody good enough would charge that number. Again, you don't want to rip somebody off, but if you charge too little, there's a perception in the market. You may see that if you buy something on Amazon, somebody's teaching ads, there's no way it's good enough. I want the more expensive. So if you are able, when you're selling as an attorney, to have multiple hats, you have that hat, you might also have a hat where somebody really needs a speeding ticket that's going to affect their ability to do work as a commercial driver, let's say. You may need to take off that elite hat and say, you know what, I'm going to make sure that you keep your job. I'm going to reduce my hourly. I'm going to reduce my flat fee. I'm going to get you in the door. That's not what you're going to say to the other guy. So I think part of it is similarly, you need to be able to say, hey, I'm a practitioner here, but if you don't block out, there are tons of books and people advocating, if you don't block out time to focus on your business, it won't grow. And there's nothing wrong with it. Look, there are many people that are probably more profitable than we are with small practices. You grow, there's a ton of overhead. A lot of people, my friends, have grown to the size and contracted, and a lot of headaches. So I'm enjoying it. While I'm enjoying it, I'm going to do it. But I am well aware that I'm not making a value judgment. Some person with two admins in themselves can be extremely profitable and take home a very, very nice income without all of those headaches with a trade-off of stress and family time. So, I feel like the key is having, and I talk about this a lot, is knowing what you won't do. What are the third rails? If you won't do marketing, make sure you find somebody. And when you find them, make sure you don't just say, here's my check, but what do you need from me? I know it's not gonna be fun, but it's better than doing it yourself. But making sure that you are honest with yourself about what you will and won't do. And in those cases, then you can sort of figure out. So my law partner and I, bookkeeping and accounting is one of our least favorite things. There's not one between us that is great at it. So that is the place that we invest additional money in a very high level CPA advisor to make sure that we are thinking about stuff. Because you could sit there and work all day, but if you pay everything to Uncle Sam, it's less exciting. So somebody looking over our shoulder, where there are other people that may be much less prolific as lawyers or marketers, but they know how to keep every penny they make. And so I feel like as people figure out what they are not good at, and when I say that, either not good at or aren't going to do, like you can talk about it. And how many blogs have you seen where there's one blog post and they haven't written a second blog in 3 years? Like the idea is not to make that mistake, which is pretending you're going to do it, and instead partnering with somebody who has that passion and skill.
So here are two huge takeaways, because what I've noticed is sometimes people who are brilliant at what they do, which I would identify you as with what you've built, both with BluShark Digital, your agency, and Price Benowitz, is a lot of times our unique ability is just secondhand nature to us, and you didn't even realize really the power of what you just said. So I want to slow down and really reflect on that. Point one is you said divide and conquer. And then the next point you said was the not to do list. So entrepreneurs, most times, if they take the Colby assessment, which I was telling you that Mike Mogill is real big on, I don't know if you took that yet, but a lot of these people, entrepreneurs, are very high quick starts, right? And they can frustrate all of their staff because they're already on to the next 10 ideas. But you think you're inspiring the team with all the what ifs, right? And I know you're smiling because you probably can relate to me on that because I'm a high quick start. But I want to slow down and understand what you just said. Okay, the not to-do list. One of the biggest things I learned with my personality as a quick start entrepreneur is the most important thing is actually not your to-do list. Because a quick start, a person who's super motivated, they'll do anything. They'll say yes to anything. You said yes to this interview. You probably have 40,000 other things you could be doing right now. But hey, you said yes. And what a lot of entrepreneurs realize, especially in strategic coach, which I'm in, is you have to create that not to-do list as a rail. So that's a big takeaway. And that's something that you learned on your own. And I had to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to learn through my coaching class. The other one is divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. So many people try to wear too many hats, right? But after too long, if you are not uniquely capable of doing one facet of your law practice consistently, it will get abandoned unless you bring down the ego and give it to someone else who would love to take that responsibility from you. And you have obviously mastered that. So I just wanted to slow down and reflect on the brilliance in those 2 points.
Well, right. Well, let's take those two one by one. First, with divide and conquer, the thing to be careful about is if it's not your skill set, being really careful, because you won't check it, and the person you invest in making sure that you're setting yourself up for success. I really think that's very important because you have no way to know until very often it's too late that there's a real problem there. So, it's, even if it's not your thing, you cannot fully outsource it. And that, just like marketing, even if you hate it, you still need to have an understanding of what's going on so that, God forbid, you find a place. There are plenty of dubious, more dubious than non-dubious people doing digital marketing. You know, if you open your inbox any morning, you find a bunch of people. I'm sure that if we secret shopped or gave them, 10 places, websites, there are 9 that would do absolutely nothing and send you a bill. You need to be, an educated consumer. And if you're not, it won't be. Our second topic was
not to do.
Not to do. And I learned that a little bit in the real estate space. The people who make a lot of money in real estate tell me it's not the deals they do that makes money, it's the deals they pass on. And I think it's the same with your time. It's, there are friends of mine in this space. You met Jay Ruane in Miami. He is a visionary. He's ahead of everybody else. The key, and I think his thing that he focuses on, because it's so, when you have that many good ideas, it's figuring out, you know what, that may be a good idea, but is there going to be an ROI down the road if it's done? And again, it's a combination between throwing the fishing line out to see what's out there. Hey, TikTok's out there. Is that going to make me rich? Maybe, people spent a lot of time on Google Plus. They went all in. Did it set them for life? No, but it built the names. People like Mark Traphagen built a name on Google Plus and used it for what it was. It didn't turn out to be Twitter, so he's not the king of Twitter the way some people who are early to Twitter were. But what I'm saying is, it's not just about ideas. There are plenty of ideas. I'm somebody, and we can talk about this. We've talked a little bit of this, but like organic social, if done well, the way like a FirmFlex is done, great. That's a product where it's cheap, $100 a month. You or your staff participate in it, better if it's you, and you'll see some returns. But if you go to a place and they charge you $2,000, $3,000 for an organic social package, I think it's nonsense. And I'm going to vent for a moment. I have a problem because clients and friends in the industry well, you don't believe in social. No, social is a misnomer. Social is really paid media. And whether it's Google AdWords, whether it's Facebook media, it is paid. Now, if you are genuine and you love Twitter and you're going to own Twitter for something, great. You can make a buck doing a lot of things in life. But if you're outsourcing, your marketing people are going to do it, or you're paying somebody for a package, it's utter nonsense that nobody's looking at, in my opinion. And I'd rather see that money moved into PPC, paid Facebook, SEO, but to put it in something where you claim it's going to be there and it's not, that's crazy. I mean, there's a whole debate about branding versus search. To me, in criminal, for example, the search is so powerful. You know what? I shouldn't yell about it. Let people continue to brand, because when you get arrested, you don't remember a brand. It takes so much to brand. There are examples where branding works and it's good. It's a good umbrella and should be part of your portfolio. Absolutely. But to kid yourself that is primary, when somebody gets arrested, they're going to Google, or their family's going to Google, and they say, who can get me out of my problem? And that's going to solve their problem. They're not going to remember a YouTube video. Now, that's not saying that your creative genius isn't great, because you know what? If you put a video up about something in your market and tag it and put it on YouTube, there are views. And will you make some money? Yes. But if somebody was saying, take the lion's share of what you're doing and put it on YouTube versus search as a single event attorney, to me, that seems like a problem. And you need to sort of think about, where are the people you want as clients and what is going to convert. And, as an SEO agency and somebody who runs it, you started this whole thing about how long will it take to pop? How long before you get ROI? Great question, magic question. I wish I always had perfect answers for it. It depends on market, where somebody's starting from, competition, all that good stuff. But the piece that I think is forgotten is, if you follow those things, we have a sign in our office at BluShark, trust the process. If you follow that process and you stay along for the ride, it will get there. I don't know when, but it's not like it's never getting there. It may be longer than you want to wait, but there is a curve that will get you there, versus other areas where if you paid somebody $3,000 a month to do organic social for you, I have yet to see somebody in the single event space that can show me ROI from that versus something like PPC. Again, there are other ways to do it. You can go and build relationships, go to the courthouse. There are tons of ways. You can send mailers. There are things, but you could test a mailer and know what's there, rather than hoping that something's going to happen, when realistically, unless you hit pay dirt and we're doing something that has the best chance, that's not the likelihood of success.
Yep. And an interesting point, which I was really pumped about when I told you when we were sitting down at the table in the open area at the Trial Lawyer Summit, is how one company, I won't mention their name, is actually thinking of the the e-signature concept, where they're going to put a pixel on every e-signature and then aggregate that data and then use that audience data in Facebook to target bottom of funnel leads who are with search intent.
Strategic move. God bless. All that stuff. But I guess my point is that's cutting edge. That's ethically figure out what you want to do. EPA and ethics and your personal moral. But what I'm saying is it's being done in a calculated way. We test stuff all the time. We did some, we're trying to get some maritime cases and use big data with Facebook. And you know what? We sucked wind for the first month and we got a case the second month. It is, you can figure these things out as they go, but at least have a strategy, not I should be in social. That's the biggest mistake. It's not like, hey, social's going place. It's everywhere. Yes, it's everywhere. But where are the people in need and where are they going to for that?
And this is a perfect segue right here is your concept that lawyers, they're not lawyers. They're actually plumbers. Yeah. So can you explain that?
This is a repurposed from John Morgan of Can't Teach Hungry, a legendary, legendary business entrepreneur. And he gave this to me a long time ago. And I embrace it, which is that when the phone rings, and we have a client management team of 12, when that phone rings, the person calling, it really is that we are a plumber. We're not some professional services that's going to come in for, yes, we are, but what we are is the hot water heater in your basement's exploded, your significant other is yelling at you. Are you remembering what social ad you saw 2 weeks ago? Probably not, unless you really own a market. Morgan has done that. Morgan owns a market. He's ubiquitous. Other people like in Louisiana and New York have done that. But if you haven't gotten to that point, and you're in the middle area, how many online retailers do you go to besides Amazon? They're over that hump. If you were branding a shoe company, unless you're Zappos that already was bought by Amazon, how many of those do you know as a household name, or are you starting your search with Google or Amazon? So I want to be there when somebody searches. We had a bar mitzvah last weekend. We needed a pair of shoes. We wanted light up shoes. We know what we want. And you're either going to one of the big aggregators, or you better figure out how to come up, because I'm not going to find you otherwise. I'm not walking down the street to find it. And I need to be. And so, yes, once I do that, you can pixel and do everything else to bring people back. But that initial contact, it is so important to make sure that you're in front of people at the time that they're raising their hands.
Yeah. So I want to go a little bit deeper, because I know that you're known for being such an expert with SEO specifically. But what's something in an interview style like this that you feel like no one's ever asked you, or something that they just gloss over and, it's kind of like expected that you understand X, Y, or Z, but really you wonder why people aren't asking about this?
It's a tough question. I'll give you one of the things from the SEO side.
Yeah.
Is you get a gazillion emails throughout the day, some from India, some from the Philippines, some from the US. I can get you on the first page. I'm very confident, right? It doesn't take a lot bravado is easy. And, as we know from watching Boiler Room and others, you can sell anything and convince a person who knows slightly less than you. I think the issue is that there are things that can be done with SEO to trick people and get them quick results. There are spammy tactics that if you are desperate and you are overseas and you want to get somebody results, or domestically, but you see a lot from overseas people, where if they burn a bridge, they just create a new website, new name, that you can do things to manipulate the search engines that are underhand and black hat. And some of them still work, and they will work for a period, but that is a house of cards and not one that I recommend. And I'd say that there are times, if you're in a hyper competitive market, where you may move closer to a line because the competition is doing that and you can't get anywhere without it. That's a decision to be made on a case-by-case basis. But I would say understanding that results aren't everything. It's sustainable results organically that are most important. And I think the other piece is looking at, we talked PPC this weekend in Miami. The other piece is that just because somebody holds themselves out as an expert, how do you know you're an expert? Just because somebody holds themselves, I just do this type of work, doesn't necessarily mean they're great at it. And it's amazing, because you can't, what schmuck is going to travel around the country to say they do X and not really be that good at it? But very often there's a big difference, just like lawyers. how many lawyers have a big website saying that they are great at X type of law and have a bunch of first-year associates churning out crappy work because nobody knows the difference.
Yep.
And so I think it's like that in digital, where you can be very compelled by a front person. The question is who's behind it, and that's, look, transparently, why I love people to come to our DC office, because they meet people. If done right, this is not a high margin game. There should be, most of your resources should be left on the field, because it is really hard to do right. And what I strive for is making sure that if people understand and buy into that, it's appreciative. We have a ton of millennials doing really both sophisticated as well as very tedious work to make this work. And that when we have clients that are appreciative and work synergistically, it's great. When you get the lawyers who are sort of off their meds and yelling, it takes a toll. We can have a whole podcast just about managing millennials. I may have to write a book on that. But what I have seen is that the same stuff that may work to run a legacy small law firm is so detrimental. We've had to fire clients because they couldn't keep it together when speaking to millennials, who frankly are more concerned often with quality of life and respect than they are cash. So, in one instance, I had to say to the one partner, look, I want to work for you, but if your partner's on the calls, we're done. And he thought about it, understood, because he has the same issue. It's not like we're saying he doesn't have the problems. He has the same problems in his own office. We went and said, hey, we need you to be our voice, because if I lose the people that you're working with, they're so hard to get and train and retain, because they're so valuable and so phenomenal, that I don't want to be in a position where they're not, where I'm going to lose somebody because of this person's behavior. It's not worth it. And so, again, it goes back to, this is a collaborative process. And when somebody says, hey, click here, I sent you an email, come by it, I'm amazed. Scorpion sends out videos and cookies, and they're the largest player in the space. And ironically, they don't generally build content or links on a regular basis. And yet they are thought of as the leading digital provider. Now, they're the biggest, I'm sure the biggest, if not almost the biggest reseller of Google AdWords. And presumably they have some data from that, which is not terrible. But in one side of the business, it shocks me that people are not saying, hey, I'm going to pay you X amount for SEO. What am I getting for it? If you're happy, great. But the idea that it's not, so what are people not, what am I actually getting for my money on a monthly basis?
There it is. Yeah, because it's so easy to feel productive by throwing money at a problem. One thing that Dan Sullivan, founder of Strategic Coach, is famous for saying is, if I have a problem and I have the money to solve the problem, I don't have a problem. But the problem with thinking like that with marketing is it is such an integral piece of your business that as soon as you become mindless about it, you're going to build up some form of resentment, or you're going to start feeling like you're being ripped off, or you're going to start feeling like you don't know what's going on. And then tracking suffers because you're not paying attention to your lead sources on a monthly basis. So lead sources is the next question I had, because you are one of the most well-connected people I think I've ever met. I mean, at the event, it was like you were, the president of all of Miami. It was pretty cool. I was just kind of like standing in your shadow, and people were introducing themselves to you. And I was like, hey, I'm Bill. And I was just like getting free intros. But with that big of a network and solidified connections in the market, like, you have to be getting cases through attorney referrals, right? So is there a percentage that you guys have calculated in terms of new cases you're getting through attorney referrals versus internet, and then by source of internet, just so people listening can get an understanding as to what's a realistic?
I don't, that's such a nebulous, I hate to not answer a question.
Wow.
So, it's everything and nothing, right? For us, because of our success in digital, that is a much higher percentage than what should be expected. As we build success in clients, it's similar, that you can dwarf your referral base. Now, in the PI game, are your best cases from referrals? Very often. But sometimes people have no idea where they came from. One of our biggest cases, we still don't know the actual origin of how stuff comes in. So it's as you build and that gets larger, yes, track, but there's a certain amount that you just won't be able to. And I think as long as that works, and I'm saying, I think depending on the type of law you do and your cost and overhead, but once you start getting to a manageable size firm, some form of media generally, there are exceptions to every rule, There's a firm down in Memphis. It's a rock star immigration firm. And they are so well known that with a little bit of internet, they have a multi-lawyer practice that's phenomenal. But that's the exception. So while I love referrals, I'll tell you for myself, we often have a lower, this is going to sound crazy, but I'll tell you, everybody's there.
Hey, I remember. Right? This stuck with me.
So in DC, we have more lawyers here than anywhere else in the world. Lawyer, lawyer, lawyer. Everybody next door, everybody's a lawyer, right? So even if they're not lawyers, they're lawyers, meaning they're not practicing lawyers. So when we get a referral from a big firm, they have 3 or 4 names for something generally. So our close rate is significantly less than if we get a great case via the internet where they've read our reviews, we can get them on the phone, we can show them who we are, because the other people we're competing against are generally not as strong, particularly with intake, et cetera. So that it is ironic for us in our little situation, while grass is always greener, and like I was so excited the day that the referrals started coming from friends in law school. We put out our shingle, and Dave was no longer a public defender, and I was thought of in the private practice, and people would start calling. But you know what? Those don't always close at the same rate as the ones. Again, there are times when the web stuff doesn't close, and but I have found that, again, if it's a personal referral, you're the only person. Yes, that's awesome. There's nothing better. But in our market, because everybody knows lawyers, the odds of getting something so personal that when something goes out on a listserv to a law firm, it's not like nobody knows anybody. Everybody knows people. And we've been very blessed not to have to be dependent on it. Love it when it comes, but that's been our story.
So this ties into the multi-channel approach that Mike Mogill, CEO of Crisp Video, really kind of hammers down on, who I love Mike, and his viewpoints around marketing. It seems like he's almost anti-tracking. And there's a very interesting viewpoint I've noticed. There's a real successful attorney we work with right in my immediate area, Larry Levin, owner of the Bulldog Lawyers. We've done his marketing for a long time. And he has one of the most expansive viewpoints when it comes to marketing. He's not worried about like immediate ROI on every initiative. He's worried about, is he getting as much out there as he possibly can and then capturing as much as he can in general terms. And I noticed this viewpoint with attorneys that just cycle through marketing vendors, keep, hoping that someone's going to just revolutionize all of their flaws in their business and their intake process and everything, all the above, for that perfect ROI solution. But ultimately it just causes, repetitive work of onboarding with a new agency, canceling in 3 months, doing nothing for 3 months, onboarding with a new agency. And so I think a large reason for this is a lot of attorneys don't have the multi-channel mindset, understanding that one impression on something here could lead to the awareness that leads to a search impression or a branded search. Now, for lawyers, I know this is different than for him, but what's your take on multi-channel marketing and tracking ROI?
Look, it's impossible. And if and the more you dig deep, the harder it is. Now, some of it possible. You could put a call rail number on and get an immediate response as to whether somebody called. But if you went based on pure trackable numbers, you will be disappointed compared to what's, I look and say, hey, I probably should cancel Avo. Since the sale, it has not been nearly as strong. PPC has gotten worse and worse of trackability, but our firm revenue keeps going up. Now, organic is stronger, but it does take a certain leap of faith. I want to track everything I can. I really do. But, I saw a Google person speak about 10 years ago at SMX in Chicago. And they were sort of talking about the Royal Caribbean buying process. You want to take your family on a cruise, rarely do you search cruise, click on that, and book right there. You're clicking, you're looking at dates, you're looking at review sites, you talk to your friends, you come back, there's all this back and forth, and then a purchase is made. And so to try to pretend that what was that seminal point, it's tough. And I believe, so for us on PPC, for example, if I looked at my PPC numbers for some criminal searches, they're okay. They're not great. I'm not, but I wouldn't be that excited about it. I wouldn't have the firm I have. But if you're in the 3-pack and you're at the ads on top and you're in the organic below, that's as good as it gets. So there's certain advantages to the real estate. You're blocking out competitors. You're showing, so even if someone doesn't click on it, that real estate is valuable. And I really think it's a question of not being ignorant to the data and pushing it, and not being oversold that, well, you don't track it. Well, there's two reasons you don't track it. One is that it's impossible to track. The other is there's really nothing coming from it. So, if you have some form, I'm making this up, paid Twitter, and you did it for 10 years, and you were sitting in the God view, like the Uber God view, where you can see how everything interconnects, and you were able to say, what did I get? It could be you spend money there all time, and you're going to end up with a 0.8 to 1 return. And it doesn't matter how much you do it or what you do, it's a bad use of funds. Versus you're doing SEO with all the right practices, it will get there. And even though your people, it's not a perfectly closed loop, you know that your revenue keeps going up since you're doing that. The piece that I sort of would say I get very sort of skittish on, and this is the problem. In one sense, you don't want a guy, it's like a job interview. You don't want somebody who switches jobs every 6 months before they get you. You're not going to hire them. At the same time, if somebody went to a bad place that's toxic and they got out after 6 months and they've held their job since, fine. So it's a question when I look at somebody and see where they've come from. If they're going from crap place to better place to okay place, and say, hey, we want you. I get it. There's an evolution of willing to spend more, they want to invest more. Versus if I know one of my solid competitors that knows what they're doing and gives a lot of love. Yes, they could have had a bad rep or a bad experience, but if you're leaving one of the good places, it's generally not that place. And that is the red flag. So, very often the people that are switching every year also are their third or fourth significant other. It is a balancing test because you don't want to not, if it's bad, you want to get out of there, but you really want to do your homework. And there's enough information out there now that you should not, like when I hear about people, signing up with a ripoff factory, I'm still amazed that with everything out there that people can't navigate that. So if somebody who does that and then they decide to say, hey, I get it, I've learned my lesson, I want to go here, but it's, we see people at conferences that they whoever they see at the next conference, they're going to sign up with, and that proves your point, which is the transaction cost of onboarding and offboarding really, and the different strategies. It just doesn't make a lot of sense, and Google gets confused. So, it's stay the course, but you better be sure you're on a decent course, and very often people don't know, especially going back to your very, very first point, which is it takes, how long will it take before it pops? And I think that people need to, even if money is not being made, are you moving up in the rankings? You started on the 6th page, you moved to the 3rd page, you're now at the bottom of the 2nd page. That will eventually make you money if you stay with it. If you say, hey, I don't have the patience for it, fine. That's an economic decision, but don't kid yourself. It's going in the right direction, even though your phone hasn't exploded yet.
Yeah. So that's a big viewpoint I think a lot of people can take away is you're hearing from someone who's, probably within the top 1% of all law firm owners in the United States, building a 40 attorney firm, say that if the strategy is right in advance, then constantly switching strategies is going to drain your resources more than the alternative, which I think is the oasis everyone sees is, oh, the next, magic bullet is, it's going to come in the horizon, right? Whereas if you just know your strategy in advance, this is why being a practitioner is so important, and being on top of trends is so important. Watching my YouTube channel, I'm literally talking about 150 videos on every single topic. And you could just watch this going to and from work in a couple weeks and know a lot of these topics. But you're hearing it not from me, from someone way more successful than me, about the importance of strategy in advance to then staying the course with that strategy. So another thing that I always like to ask is, any books that really changed your life or something that was a light switch for you?
It's funny. I know it's been discredited, but I go back to like Good to Great, and that has been something where the concept is, I still believe in, which is get the right people on the bus. As you do that, how do you run 2 businesses? Having a great person at the helm of each that you can trust, coordinate with, and that if you get that's the difference. So to me, there's no shortage of great business books out there. And I'm one of those guys, I go to a conference, somebody mentions it, I'm Amazoning it, having my inbox next. But I would say, some of these classics, the fundamentals, still are there. In Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, I believe it was. He talked about 10,000 hours on task, and the idea that, it's, if you do something over time, that it's the difference between an amateur pianist, a school teacher, or a concert, figuring out and getting great at whatever you do. Because you know what? If you're the king of YouTube, you're going to make a buck. If you are if you master social, you can make a buck.
Own your platform.
Own your platform. But I think also be realistic about what platform you're on for what type of client you're looking for, and realizing that it should not be done in a vacuum. And that, frankly, if you love YouTube and, people are not finding their trusted estates lawyer through YouTube, you probably shouldn't spend your 10,000 hours there. But if you say, hey, I'm going to use that time for something I think I can monetize, God bless, and go with it. But I think you need to be conscious of what is the, again, never take your side. It's, somebody says, how do you judge an SEO company? Let's go back using that as my analogy. Is it page views? Is it clicks in? Is it the actions taken, where the number of people that are taking an action? Is it phone calls? Is it clients signed up, or is it revenue? Because at the end of the day, we're not doing it for fun. We're doing it for that monetary piece. So we all aspire for the closed loop. We mentioned a minute ago that even getting it from the marketing point of view is so tough, and it's getting harder. So many different channels, trust pieces out there. What I would say is use it, evaluate it, but don't see it in a vacuum, because you could see something could be working that you're cutting off because you're not reading the data correctly. Yep.
So I have two last questions. Well, I guess one is a point, and then the last one is a question. But the point I want to reflect on what you just said is, you said something very quickly, which I think was very, a lot of wisdom behind it, is if you hate writing, you can write one blog, but you will give up at some point. So for me to have made 150 YouTube videos in 6 or 7 months on every imaginable topic literally is the joy of my week. Of course, there's some days where it's a pain in the ass, recording all those videos in one day and my voice hurts, but it's fun. When the camera's on, that is my way of giving content direction to my company. We have systems in place where when I create a video, I have bullets, there's show notes, they get sent to someone who transposes it to a blog post that embeds the video in it. Boom, that's our content strategy, because I can drive that with little to no effort, because this is easy for me to do. So if any attorney could just find one thing they could stay consistent with that'll drive that content strategy, even if it's hiring a company like BluShark for high-end SEO and just doing those interviews every month, or even just doing videos to get talking about the stuff do something you can be consistent with. I don't care if it's, dressing up in an inflatable flailing arm costume at a street corner. If you can be consistent with it and it's enjoyable, you'll probably succeed. So that was the one point that you said quickly I wanted to point out. The last question that, I really want to hit home here and hear your answer on is an attorney listening to this that has flatlined or hit a plateau. And that's 90% of people listening. Everyone goes through plateaus. You've probably been through a plateau. It is in my belief, I made a video on this, it is the one thing that most people don't grow out of, because you have to step up who you are. You have to learn new skills. You got to delegate different things. You got to take those extra leaps. So for someone listening right now who's like, yeah, this is all good. Yeah, another SEO thing, someone, 40 attorneys, that's great. That's not me. What helped you get past certain plateaus in your business? And what's one big takeaway that they could really get out of a plateau with, maybe a mindset?
Again, it's a difficult question. I think the right answer comes down to the Nike commercial. Just do it. Whether it's content, whether it's videos, start doing something, because nothing happens sitting at home. It may be that you, instead of staying home, you take an extra breakfast, you go to an extra meeting. Those things inspire you, move you. It may be the new guy who you could acquire for your firm. It may be the place that you sell to. It may be somebody who gives you a great idea on video strategy. I've been going to NTL for 9 years. There's a lot of regurgitated, content there. And when I meet fresh, like if I had sat at home at a light, big family event over the weekend, I got on the plane, I went there, I met you. And I don't say this lightly, like you're thinking about ways that most people aren't. You're just added a new dimension to what I'm doing. And not in a bad way, but meaning if you make it a big tent, and whether we do business together or whether we inspire each other, whatever it turns out to be, it wouldn't have happened if you sat at home. So you can't like go to every conference, although I do, but the idea being don't get out of your comfort zone, go to an extra networking event, do an extra piece of video, research what it would take, write some, look, if you are an expert in your area, you audio tape or you write, sit down on your computer and write a 3,000 word treatise on your topic and add that to make that your homepage. Meaning figure something out that will move the needle. Again, is that going to revolutionize? No, but it's each incremental piece. And so that, 5 years from now, when Google says, hey, that thing's been there for 5 years, and it's 3,000 words, and there's nobody else in Montana doing family law with something that authoritative, and the algorithm finally likes it, nothing will happen sitting at home. So continue to build, continue to get out of the house and do things, because that's sort of how I've done it, is just made sure that, I'll leave you with this. When I was a study abroad student at University of Sydney, and a buddy of mine, when I got there, he was an Australian rugby player who loved a beer or two. And he said his advice to me, which he did when he went abroad, was if anybody said to you, do you want a beer? Doesn't matter if you're already in bed and ready to go to sleep. You get out of bed, you go down to the pub and you sit there. You make those contacts. So hopefully you don't become an alcoholic. But the idea being that if you have nothing to do one weekend, you know what I've done for a conference? I didn't want to spend time with my kid. I brought my kid along. He sat here with an iPad while I sat through some talks or gave a talk, and then we went out to the parties together at night. And you know what? You can network just as well with a kid as without, but the idea being that if you can incorporate it and not feel that you're resenting the fact that you're doing something else or it's taking away from something, but rather it's part of the greater purpose of what you're doing, to me, that's everything.
Wow. Unbelievable thing to stop on. One quick point in what you just said is also it has to do with who, not just what to do. You reframed my question and you actually said, surrounding yourself with people who are pushing things can inspire the mind, even if it doesn't result in immediate business. So it's also who and what to do. So awesome point, Seth. I'm sure everyone's going to get a tremendous amount of value from this video. I really appreciate your time. I know you're probably going to bill me after this with your hourly rate. But anybody who wants to check out BluShark Digital, what's the URL, Seth?
It's BLU Shark Digital, no E, and it's Seth at BluShark Digital. I throw my cell phone out, 347-661-9999. I geek out on this stuff. Don't feel like I have to make money from it. If you have a question and I can answer it, I'm happy to do that. Like everybody does what they like. I love this stuff. So if you have a problem, I'll leave you with this. I was at a conference and a woman had a strategic problem. She practiced on the West Coast, but she lived on the East Coast. And Google was giving her a really hard time. And I gave her a solution. It cost her $200. She set it up. She added it to her mix. And I was randomly at a cocktail party. She didn't remember who I was, but she figured out who I was. Huge hug. So to me, if you have that, it's rising tides. Please feel free to reach out, whether it's for BluShark stuff or just like, hey, how do I get from A to B?
Awesome. So thank you everyone for listening. Stay great and don't be complacent. Take advice from someone who's grown from 2 to 40 attorneys. Rewatch this video if you have to. There are so many gems in it. I would watch it 10 times in a row, because if you slow down, you really look at the points he's making. There are a lot of natural talents he has that we all can learn from. So thank you so much again, Seth, and stay great, everyone. Please subscribe to SMB Team YouTube channel for updates on our newest videos, and put your email in at our website if you want to get put on our daily email drip for value-add emails every day to your inbox on law firm marketing. Thank you so much.